Mega Man X is one of my favorite game series. They're energetic action platformers that I can always go to when I want to have some comfortable fun. Starting today is a project I've had in my head for years now. I want to look back at the series and why these games are so important to me. So welcome to the Mega Man X Retrospective, or the Mega Man Xtrospective if we're trying to be a little crazy. We're going to kick it off with the first game in the series and the first one I played, the original Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo. I first got introduced to the Mega Man series as a whole from YouTube videos talking about how good Mega Man 2 was. I even played a demo of that game on my mom's iPhone in 2009. Then I watched the YouTuber Clement J642 play the other games in the series, and I tried Mega Man 10 on WiiWare when that came out. A year later in 2011, I saw the original Mega Man X collection on GameCube at a GameStop, and I bought it. And the first Mega Man X was the game that really got me into the series. I liked Mega Man 10, but X was so addicting. I played it all the time in middle school. As I got older, I delved more into the series with the PlayStation X games, and I actually haven't played this one as much. So I'm really interested in what my thoughts will be as a 24-year-old. Oh, and I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would really help me grow and continue to make more content like this. The last video had a really great response, so I'm trying to keep up the momentum. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy the video. Mega Man X is a sequel series to the original Mega Man games. Set 100 years after them in 21XX, the protagonist X is an advanced robot designed by Dr. Light from the classic series. Unlike other robots, he possesses free will, which gives him great potential, but is also a great danger if he decides to rebel against humanity. 30 years in stasis are required to ensure X is not a threat, but sadly Dr. Light is very old at this point and won't live long enough to see his creation out into the world. X is discovered and released by a man named Dr. Kane, who uses X's design to create other robots with free will called Reploids. However, some Reploids rebel against humanity as Dr. Light feared. These Reploids are labeled Mavericks, and other Reploids are tasked with stopping them. These Reploids are known as Maverick Hunters, and X is one of them. But he isn't as strong as others on his team, like his friend Zero, or the leader of the Maverick Hunters, Sigma. Fun fact, Zero was originally supposed to be the main character in the series, but he was changed to a side character, and X was created to more closely resemble classic Mega Man. One day, Sigma himself goes Maverick, and it's up to X to stop him and his army from destroying humanity. However, X is defeated by the Maverick Vial in the intro level and is only saved when Zero shows up. Zero tells him he's not at his full potential yet and he needs to get stronger. X accomplishes this by taking down Mavericks working for Sigma and upgrading himself along the way. X and Zero regroup in Sigma's fortress, where Vial captures Zero and X. But Zero is able to break free, and he sacrifices himself before X finally defeats Vial. The loss of Zero is a real shame because he'd be a really fun character to play as, but Zero will never, ever be seen again. X then defeats Sigma and has a little existential crisis where he wonders when he'll be able to stop fighting. 2004, my friend. It all ends in 2004. Sigma then vows to return in a new body, like he's Rick Sanchez or something, and the game ends. The story is much more involved than previous Mega Man games. This was one of the goals during development. It still isn't deep or anything, but it certainly is more interesting, and for a 2-hour-long Super Nintendo game, it does a very good job. What stands out to me is how well the game puts you in X's shoes. You see, stories in video games are very different in that the player is actively involved, as opposed to a movie or a book. You are X when you play the game. It's kind of like a second-person point of view. So when Vial beats you, you feel like you're not strong enough. But when you're strong enough to beat Vial and Sigma, you do feel growth and a sense of accomplishment in what you've done as X. And that's what I like about the story. There's a lot more that happens in other games, but we're just talking about the first X game for now. I will also say that I really like the designs for the characters in these games. Well, except for Vial, because he's literally just Boba Fett but purple. The production values are also a step up. Since we're on the Super Nintendo, the graphics are much more detailed than the NES Mega Man games, and it looks very good for the time. Especially the backgrounds. And then there's the music. Oh man, the music in the classic series was good. But the soundtracks in the X series are just so great, and this game is one of the best. The whole soundtrack is just amazing. I think Storm Eagle's theme is my personal favorite, but it's all such high quality. Now we get to the gameplay. At first it seems pretty identical to the original Mega Man games. You can still jump, shoot, and charge your buster, but there's quite a few differences. Like there's no slide, and you can jump on walls now. X can also upgrade himself a lot. He can get 8 heart tanks that permanently increase his health, 4 sub tanks that refill his health during fights, which can be replenished by collecting health energy from defeated enemies, and 4 armor parts, containing upgrades Light left behind for X and capsules. The armor parts were actually inspired by RPGs at the time, where characters are constantly improving throughout the game. They are extremely useful. The body parts cut the damage you take in half, the buster parts give you the ability to charge up special weapons, and gives the X-Buster another charged attack. The head parts let you break certain blocks with your head. Okay, that one's kinda lame. And the most important one, the foot parts let you dash. The dash greatly increases your ground speed, and by combining it with the jump, you can dash jump to fly through the air, which you use all the time in this game. This upgrade is so important, it has its own button, which I always set to the L trigger. In terms of structure, there's an intro level, and once you beat that, there are 8 Maverick stages you can go to in any order you want. And you've guessed it, you fight a Maverick at the end of the stage. All the upgrades are in these Maverick stages, with each one containing a heart tank, and some stages having sub-tanks and light capsules. The Mavericks each give you a special weapon when you defeat them, and every Maverick is weak to another's special weapon, creating a weakness chain. For example, Boomer Kuwanger is weak to Launch Octopus's weapon, and Stink Chameleon is weak to Boomer Kuwanger's weapon. Following the chain all the way leads you to Armored Armadillo, whose weapon beats Launch Octopus. After you beat the Maverick stages, Sigma's Fortress opens up, and these are the final levels, with the boss rush sprinkled in there. By the way, in the upcoming X reviews, I'm going to make this structure section much shorter. But this is the first X game, so I need to fully explain it here. The gameplay is really fun in this game. Adding the dash makes the game so much more fast-paced than the classic Mega Man games. And I already think the basic shooting and jumping was fun there, so this just enhances that. There's even a mechanic in this game, where if you shoot a pellet and dash at the same time, the shot does double the damage. Wall jumping is also a cool addition, and it makes boss fights more interesting, since you're really using the full space of the arena. It also allows for more vertical platforming, and the level design is fantastic. Every stage is fun to jump around in, while duking it out with enemies. They do a good job of mixing it up, without feeling gimmicky. Like some stages are just standard platforming, such as Storm Eagle, but a stage like Stink Chameleon has a ride armor, which is a vehicle X can pilot that has its own health bar, and fights enemies by punching them in the face. And with all the collectibles in this game, you're really encouraged to explore everything in the stages to power up X. And upgrading X feels satisfying because everything you get is so useful. For example, the sub-tank's ability to heal you, and the body part that cuts damage in half, both make fighting bosses much easier. The special weapons are also helpful. Storm Eagle's weapon just destroys most enemies, has a massive hitbox, and lingers for a few seconds. Or Stink Chameleon's weapon when fully charged makes you invincible for a bit, and let me fly through half of Boomer Kuwanger's stage. I think all the special weapons are useful in this game, which is something I definitely can't say in future X games, but I digress. Every few minutes in this game you're getting stronger with a heart tank here and a special weapon there. It's very fast paced because there's always something going on. Because you can fight the 8 Mavericks in any order you choose, there are many different ways of playing these games, and that's a big part of what makes them so replayable to me. If you watched my previous video on the X8 16-bit demake, which you totally should if you haven't by the way, it's a great video, you'll know I like coming up with my own specific routes through the X games. My routing is all about getting the best upgrades as soon as possible, getting every item, and minimizing backtracking. This usually involves not following the weakness chain all the way, but I don't really bother with that anyway, because I actually think it makes the game less fun. A critique I have with this game and the whole X series is using a Maverick's weakness on them traps them into one very simple pattern that essentially nullifies them. The community calls this Spark Mandrill syndrome, where the boss is metaphorically, and literally, frozen by his weakness, making him a total joke. Like he's not even moving half the time, come on. For most of these games, I usually fight the Maverick bosses with just the X-Buster, because what's the point of a boss fight if you're not being challenged in some way? It makes the game much more fun in my opinion. Everyone who plays this game starts with Chill Penguin first, because his stage gives you the dash, which is not only the best upgrade in the series, but is also the only one you're required to get. It really is salient to pick this up ASAP, because the game is heavily designed around it. So many collectibles require dash jumping to get, and it just makes the game move along much faster. After Chill Penguin, I do Storm Eagle to grab the first heart and sub-tanks. By the way, I really like sub-tanks. It's nice how you always have them, unlike energy tanks in the classic series. This stage also gives you the head parts to break blocks, which you'll need in the next level. Storm Eagle is kinda infamous for being a joke, and I was honestly surprised at how free he was. He didn't even directly attack me most of the fight. Flame Mammoth is up next, and his stage gives you the Buster upgrade, which will be very useful in a bit. For now, I'll say that I've never been a big fan of the last stage of the X-Buster charge it gives you in this game, because it's weaker on bosses than the non-upgraded version, which is very strange. Flame Mammoth is surprisingly easy without his weakness. Fun fact, you can chop off his trunk with Boomer Quanger's weapon. Wait, is that mutilation? So far my order has been pretty standard, but things change with Sting Chameleon up next. I chose him because I know the damage reduction part in his stage will be really helpful to have early along with his special weapon. This boss fight is actually pretty tough without his weakness, since he's invincible a lot of the time. I barely beat it, but to be fair, I was too lazy to grind for sub-tank ammo beforehand. Beating Sting Chameleon gives you his weapon that, as aforementioned, makes you temporarily invincible. Having access that early is pretty neat, and with 4 stages done, we have all 4 armor upgrades already. I then took on Launch Octopus, who is actually pretty tough, since he's another guy who loves being invincible, and he shoots at enemies that block my shots at him. I will say, beating Sting Chameleon and Launch Octopus both felt really satisfying because of how tough they were. I then backtracked through Chill Penguin stage to get a heart tank I needed Flame Mammoth's weapon for, and Sting Chameleon stage for another heart tank. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is beating certain Mavericks affects other Maverick stages. For example, beating Storm Eagle before Spark Mandrill crashes his plane into the stage and causes it to occasionally black out. Some of these changes let you grab some upgrades. Like in Sting Chameleon stage, there's a heart tank that's inaccessible until Launch Octopus is beaten, which floods the cave and lets you dash jump to get it. This is an interesting idea that I think is cool, but I do get why other games in the series don't do it, because it can lead to more backtracking for first-time players. Anyway, next up I did Armored Armadillo, who I definitely should have done after Flame Mammoth, because his stage has the 3rd sub-tank and is the best in the game for grinding lives and health energy. Seriously, it's so fast here, and the grind spot is right at the start. Man, this game is so well designed. The reason I did this stage late is because I was scared of the boss. He can actually absorb the Chard's X-Buster shot, so I had to fight him with pellets, and he can be a little tough. But with 3 sub-tanks, he definitely would have been fine. You can also do Launch Octopus before Sting Chameleon to save yourself a backtrack, but I felt like doing him early, and I needed footage of a before and after stage change. Last up I did Boomer Quanger and Spark Mandrill, both of which went down easy with the X-Buster because of how strong my nearly maxed out X is at this point. I did Mandrill after Quanger because Quanger's weapon gets you the last sub-tank. And that's my order through the game. If you do Launch Octopus before Chameleon, the only backtrack you'll need is in Chill Penguin stage, which everyone has to do anyway. Okay, technically there is another backtrack. Once you have every collectible in the game, including all special weapons, take this minecart and Armored Armadillo stage to this ledge with full HP. Then jump into the pit to repeat the sequence in the exact same way 3 more times. On the 4th time, a Dr. Light capsule will be there, where he gives you the Hadouken from Street Fighter. It's so funny to me how Light is dressed up like Ryu here, by the way. The Hadouken is pretty good in this game. It kills everything in one hit, including bosses with full HP if you do the input from Street Fighter. I kinda suck at it, but I think it's a really cool feature. Getting it is super convoluted though, since it's the kind of nonsense you'd only know about from Nintendo Power, but it's a fun secret that helps with the tedious boss rush in the final stages. I don't like boss rushes in Mega Man games, because they're just the same fights you already did, but easier because you're always stronger at the end of the game. They're padding and I use the weaknesses on them here to get a move on. The bosses are pretty fast in this game at least, especially with the Hadouken. Sigma's the final boss and he has 3 phases. The first 2 are pretty easy, but the real demon is the last phase. Sigma is constantly throwing out attacks with big hitboxes, and you can only fight him by jumping on his moving hands that also attack you. You just need to get a rhythm for when lightning shoots out of his hands, but I was pretty rusty at that part this playthrough, until the end of the fight. If you die, there are some worm enemies to fight who can refill your sub-tanks, but it takes too long for me if you used all 4 against Sigma. So what I did instead is I got my lives down to 0 in Storm Eagle stage, and then fought Sigma so if I lost, I could game over to the stage select screen and refill my sub-tanks in Armored Armadillo stage. This didn't end up happening this playthrough because I'm too clean with it, but I just wanted to share that because I've lost to him a lot in my life, and I do not enjoy grinding against those worms. But anyway, Sigma goes down, and that's curtains for the original Mega Man X. I have to say, this game is even better than I remembered it. The music's great, the story's well told, collecting upgrades is fun, there's always something going on, the game design is fantastic, it's a good level of difficulty, it's fast paced, it's just amazing. I had some minor complaints with it, but I love this game. I remember why I played it so much as a kid, and I definitely plan on playing it more frequently now. It's one of the best games in the series, potentially even the best, and one of the best games ever made. 30 years later, and it still holds up extremely well. So next up in the retrospective is... Wait, what is next up? Sorry, just had to double check my math. Okay, next up will be Mega Man X2, which I'm really looking forward to playing again. Thanks for watching this video, and sayonara.